Hi everyone, my name is Julien. I am an entrepreneur in residence in a SaaS startup studio you might have heard about called eFounders. And today I'm not going to talk to you about how you're going to multiplicate your monthly revenue by X amount. I think there have been a lot of talks about this already. What I want to talk about today is sort of where SaaS is sort of going in the next 5 years. And at eFounders, we've had this sort of like existential crisis for the last few years, where we've been wondering whether we'll be able to build SaaS companies the same way we've been doing it, but for the next 5 years. And the short answer to that is no. We think the traditional approach of like, I find a problem, I solve it, put it in the cloud, send it to my clients, they buy it right away, is not exactly going to work. And we know that because we actually build a lot of companies. Some of you might have heard about us. Just for a quick background, we are a SaaS startup studio. We've been around for more than 5 years. We have offices in Paris and Brussels, and we build 4 SaaS companies every year. We build and launch those companies together with entrepreneurs, all the way from ideation to a seed round led by VCs. And those are companies like Aircall, Mention, Front, Mailjet, you might have heard about before. And what all those companies have in common that they aim to build the future of work, right? And they aim to solve problems for small and medium-sized companies. But they also have one major flaw. And I hate to say this because I'm supposed to be promoting what my company is doing, but the major flaw they have is that at the end of the day, they're just another extra tool, another extra application that we're asking our customer to be using, right? And we see it every day. We launch new products. We talk to thousands of customers, and they always end up telling us, oh, here is a great solution to my problem, but it's another one more application I need to add and I need to get people to use. And that's really sort of creating a friction. And if you think about it, it's nothing really surprising in terms of numbers. If you look back in 2007, there were about 400 SaaS services out there. Less than 10% SMEs were adopting SaaS. And the average SME would use about 2 SaaS applications. That would be maybe the email and the CRM, for example. Now, 10 years later, there are more than 12,000 applications available, more than 75% adoption. And the average SME went from using about 2 applications on average to 16 applications, gone time 8 in just about a decade. And Mark Anderson famously said, software is eating the world, and he meant it in a good way, right? He meant that the market is growing, there's a huge opportunity, and this is one of the reasons companies, like we've launched companies at eFounders. But what we started to realize is that what we decided to do at eFounders is look at it in a more counterintuitive way, and to sort of like find reasons to complain about it. And that's what French people do. We're French, so we decided to complain and find reasons to complain about it. And we started asking ourselves, okay, isn't software as a service reaching a tipping point? Aren't there too many applications out there? Isn't it becoming way too difficult to actually sell those applications to our customers? And aren't we fooling ourselves thinking that people we even care about in the first place? And we actually even started thinking we're guilty. We're guilty of creating more applications that people might not know if they even want to use or not. And that's become more of a bigger challenge for us as we launch 4 new SaaS companies every year. And it's funny because when we talk to founders or friends of ours, what they tell us is always the same thing. They tell us, oh, so how can I find new exciting business ideas, right? And that's probably why people come here at SaaS Talk, right? They try to find those new business ideas that are going to make it. Or how will we differentiate ourselves from the competition? Or how can we keep customer acquisition low? Or how can we optimize our sales channel? And this is what a lot of the talks today at SaaS Talk were bothered about. And this is a fine way to think about it. But at eFounders, we decided to look at it. We thought that was a little bit of a selfish way of thinking, and we decided to look at it from the perspective of the user, right? What does it mean for SaaS users on a daily basis? So we've run some sort of study across all of our portfolio companies and all of the customers and users we have, and we started asking them, okay, what are the main challenges that they face, especially related to the fact that they use more and more application for the last decade. And we've identified sort of 4 main problems. The first is a simple usability problem, right? It's a personal one. It's the one you faced this morning when you open your browser and started using your applications. Like, how do I handle all those applications together? How do I onboard my employees on those different applications, right? And that's becoming more and more problematic as you have more and more applications. The second problem is a problem we've all had is when we wonder what tool should I use for emailing or for analytics, right? Those are problems, those are things we're wondering about, which application should I use for each of the functionality in my business. Then there's a compatibility problem. When you start using different applications, you have data across different applications, you're wondering, how do those applications actually end up integrating with each other? You have a lot of redundant data that's stored in different applications. You want to make sure they work well together. And finally, that's sort of the nightmare of any person in charge of IT in a company, is the administration problem, right? How do I know which user is using which application? How do I enforce certain security and I make sure that people authenticate and access this application in a safe way? And we've looked at different alternatives, different solutions to those problems. And we've realized there are quite a bunch. If you look at the usability problem, there are typically two categories of solutions. There are what our friends at Point Nine Capital refer to as SaaS enhancers, right? Those are like the extension you use each and every day. You add to your Gmail, your Clearbit, your Mixmax, your mail tracker, all of those things that basically improves the usability of the tool because they are directly integrated in the interface of your Gmail in that case. And then there's a new trend we've seen coming up, which are aggregators. So those are basically applications that try to bring applications together. France is a good example. They had a big success on Product Hunt a few years back. They're basically centralizing all of your chat applications like your WhatsApp, your Messenger, your Slack, and so on into one single tool. You also see new types of browsers like Rambox or Managium. All those things are coming together. The discovery problem, if you've ever Googled, which application should I use for my email or which analytics tool should I use, you probably end up with GetApp, G2 Crowd. They're even here. They have booths everywhere. I think most of us know them very well. Funny enough, even the most famous product, the most successful product on Product Hunt isn't even a product. It's something called Startup Stash. And it's basically a simple web page that lists all of the tools you can use in different functionality of your business. If we look at compatibility, there are also solutions that are coming out, like Segment, plugging your analytics together, Tray.io that came out recently, or Zapier, we've all probably used at least once to try to integrate data across different applications, or Google Drive, or Trello, or whatever. And finally, when it comes to administration, there are also a lot of solutions out there. Identity managers have moved to the cloud, so you see solutions like Okta, right here as well with the booth, Nextstop, OneLogin, BTM, and then you have function-specific apps as well. Like we've seen onboarding apps like Rippling coming out. There are even applications like Spendesk. This is one of our portfolio companies that basically allow you to track all of your SaaS subscriptions in one single dashboard. So they're basically solutions to all those problems. But doesn't anything bothers you here in a way? To me, what sort of bothers me is like all these tools are just more tools that we have to use, right? At the end of the day, it's just another thing that we have our onboard users on, our employees on. It's another tool that we have to push them to use, and it's just adding more and more application we have to use. And what we've realized that when we talk to our customers and users, they tell us that they typically face two choices, right? It's sort of a red pill, blue pill kind of decision. Either they choose the red pill, and that means sort of what we call becoming a SaaS hippie. They say, I will use less SaaS. And I've had that on the sales call myself, where I call a prospect, I explain our product, and they say, well, we only use 5 applications, right? We have a Gmail or Trello, whatever. We won't use more applications than that. So you fall into some sort of Hunger Games, right, where you not only have to convince that your product is the best out of the competition, but it's also the best to use. It's worth using it on top of other applications. But luckily, this is just a minority. And then there are companies that really look for a solution, that really look to adopt your solution to help them with their growing SaaS stack. So at eFounders, we ask ourselves, okay, how do we enable software as a service? How do we enable companies to use more of them without just adding to the complexity of it? And what we've discovered is that out of the 4 problems I've told you about, usability is sort of what will drive the next generation of SaaS application. And what I mean by usability, it doesn't mean you will have a great UX. I think this is what was necessary basically up until today, right? We often hear that Slack was successful because they have a great UX, UI experience. You will hear that Trello, same thing about Trello, about a lot of applications that were successful in the last 5 years. But we think that tomorrow, it won't be so much about building a great UX experience. It'll be more about removing the UX and make it as transparent as possible so it actually matters less and less over time. And to explain what I mean, we've sort of from now, when we launch a new company, we sort of identify them in sort of 4 main categories. And that directly relates to the usability of the product. And the first is you can either be the UX, and that's basically what platforms like Slack or Salesforce are doing. This is where you spend 80, 90% of your time, right? So those plans will become the platforms of choice where you spend most of your working hours. And then applications come on top and leverage it. This would be, for example, Brick. It's a product we launched just today, actually, on Product Hunt at eFounders, which is a virtual credit system to do peer recognition among people. I use it every day. I've never even been in the UX. It's directly integrated to my Slack, and I do a /give/comment, and I can automatically interact with the software without even having to bother about the interface. A third category are applications that merge the UX together. There's a tool called Her that basically allows you to bring data from your sales and marketing channels and basically bring them together into one nice dashboard. So instead of going to like 4 or 5 different UX experiences, you only have to go to one. Another product we've launched at Station is at eFounders, and it's one that I'm working on, is called Station. It's basically a single workstation that centralizes all of your work application inside one single interface. So there'll be more and more of this application that try to sort of merge the UX between all of the other applications that don't necessarily integrate with our Slack or our Salesforce. And finally, sort of like the last step of the epiphany, and that we believe on and we're trying to build some expertise in as well, is what will kill the UX. And what we think will kill the UX, obviously, is artificial intelligence. One example I put here is a company called Logix. They've raised $7 million. They're based out of Tel Aviv. And basically what they do is, it's an AI that do contract reviewing for you, right? So they go directly into your contracts, do the contract reviewing, and directly send it to the salesperson so they can send it to the customer. And what that means is that there's no need for interface, because as far as I know, artificial intelligences are not really bothered about interface in the first place. They just want to pick the data and do what they have to do. What we think is those things are not mutually exclusive, right? They work kind of all together. They come in the same picture. So at the end of the day, we think that in the next 5 years, what will sort of happen is you'll see more and more platforms. So there's already Slack and Salesforce, but we think there's more space for more platforms to come as well. Those platforms will directly connect with other platforms. I've mentioned Break. Another one could be Harvest. It's a time tracking app that directly plugs into your Slack. There will still be applications out there that don't necessarily integrate with your Slack or your Salesforce, and for this, you will basically need applications that help you to bring them together and merge the data between them, or merge the interface between them. And then, last step, AI will come in and try to kind of make some of those applications and some of those interfaces sort of redundant. This is sort of what we believe in right now. What this means, those applications become sort of data centers. They become repositories of data, which AI will pick on top and then send insights directly into the platform you're using, like your Slack or your Salesforce, for example. We had a little fun with our in-house designer, Megan, at eFounders, and we tried to kind of like imagine what it would look in a few years from now, right? What the average inside salesperson, for example, what the average workflow would look like. And we think that they would basically wake up in the morning, they have a single interface where they find all of the application neatly organized. It won't be just a browser or a web page or whatever. Then they open their platforms of choice, could be a Slack or a Salesforce, also examples, but they could change in the future. And then they get direct insights from the intercom, for example, that we feed them directly with all of the leads they've been getting on the landing page directly into their Slack channel. They won't even have to bother about the intercom interface anymore. And then the AI will come in, review the contract they're sending to their prospect, attach it into their Salesforce directly so they can send it to their customer. And this is kind of what we think the future will look like. You might agree, you might disagree, and in fact, I'll be really interested to chat with you after the talk. We'll have a Guinness together at the end of the talk, if you agree with that vision or not. Thank you.